Hello, everyone. My name is Zach, and this is Science Explosion at Hudson Public Library. All right, so for anyone that wants to follow along with me today, I'll give you the list of ingredients to get started. All right, so we are making our own rocket today, a rocket engine. So what you need is a jar. It should be a glass jar. And then you'll want a lid, and you'll want to punch or drill a hole in that lid. I just punched a nail through this, and it's going to be very important that if you're using a mason jar type one like I have, you don't put the ring on it. That's going to be really important later, and I'll talk to you about that why. Now, if you don't have this type of lid, you can use another type of screw-on lid as long as it can sit on top without being screwed on. So if I tip it, it should fall off. So as long as you can do that, then you've got a good enough lid for this to work. All right, then you're gonna need some hydrogen peroxide. You can get this at a lot of different stores. You can find this at grocery stores and at pharmacies. Alrighty. So then you'll also need some yeast. You'll only need about a teaspoon's worth of it. These packets like this come in, I think it's about 2.5 teaspoons. Then you'll need a teaspoon. So fun fact, teaspoons are named after the type of spoon. So the measurement of this, there's tablespoons and there's teaspoons. So a tablespoon is like the kind of wider spoons they would use to have soup, and a teaspoon is the other type of spoon that's a little bit smaller, like for having tea. This one's a little big for a teaspoon, but it'll work. All right, and then you will need a lighter. So I've got a lighter right here. If you don't have a lighter, matches will work just fine. Just something to start a fire. All right, and on that note, you are going to want to be safe with this. So whenever you are working with fire, you always want to do it in a safe way. So you want to have a way to put out your fire. So with a fire like this, water is just fine to put it out. So I've got my water bottle right here, and I'm also right next to a sink. So this is easy to put out. Now, if you really wanted to be safe, you could do this outside where you are not surrounded by flammable things. All right, and then the last thing that you're going to need is pasta, and it's got to be a specific kind of pasta. There's a couple that'll work, but you need one that's shaped like a tube. All right, so that is for it to be able to lay flat down where we're putting this. And now, if you've got one that's like a ziti where it is completely flat on the bottom and it's round, that is the absolute best kind. Now, I didn't have that, so I used penne, and I sawed off the bottom so that it's pretty much flat. It was actually harder to saw this than I thought it would be. So if you've got one with a round, like a tube, like this, you can see through it like that, and is flat on the bottom, that's going to be the best kind that you have. Now, if it's curved like macaroni, or if it's just something like an angel hair, like spaghetti, then that is not going to work for you. You'll definitely need one that's shaped like a tube. All right, so that's all you need to follow along. I figure you probably have a lot of these things at home, if not all of them. All right, so what kind of science are we doing today? Well, we are building a rocket engine, so we are doing rocket science. So I think that sounds just absolutely fun to say. So some people might be wondering, why do people always say, well, it's not rocket science, or things like that when they're talking about something that's really difficult? Well, what we're doing today is making a basic engine, but our engine's not going to have to pull anything up into space or launch anything up into space. But that's the really hard part about rocket science. So to make it really simple, the problem is that fuel, which is what you're burning to make something go, just like when you put gas in a car, that fuel weighs something. So you're having to launch not just the rocket, but all of the fuel up into space too. And at the beginning of that, the fuel weighs enough on that rocket that it's too heavy to get into space. All right. But when you burn some of that fuel, now it's lighter. So it's a lot more complicated than you would think to launch something into space. That's why it's taken quite a while. But now we figured out how to do that a lot easier. All right, so we're not going to be launching anything into space. We're not actually going to use our engine to launch anything for this, but I'm going to show you how it's going to work. So, all right, take your jar and your hydrogen peroxide. We're going to be using quite a bit of this. And you're going to pour it into the jar about 2/3 of the way. And I think this is going to go a lot faster if I just take the lid off and pour it in instead of squeezing it out, because you don't normally use quite that much. All right, so what is hydrogen peroxide? It actually doesn't really smell like a whole lot, which makes sense because water is H2O, so there's 2 hydrogens for every oxygen. This is hydrogen per oxide, so there is 1 hydrogen per oxygen. So this is just hydrogen and oxygen, but there's more hydrogen than there is oxygen. Now you can drink water just fine, but you absolutely cannot drink this. This would actually be quite dangerous to drink. All right, but that's what it is. This is hydrogen and oxygen. All right, so now we've got that. So now these next steps are going to go a little bit faster. So you'll want to be ready with your pasta. Oh, it would have been easier to use scissors to cut this open. But it tears. There we go. All right. And here is my yeast. All right, so before I add that in, let's see if you can look in there a little bit. So you can see my little yeast pellets in here. All right, so you can take a teaspoon of this. Yeah, that's about right. All right, so then you're gonna pour it in here. I'm gonna shake that up just a little bit here. Put my lid on. Then I'm gonna put my pasta there. And you should notice that it's starting to bubble. Let's see, I wanna make sure I get enough time here. So it'll wipe once it's reacted enough. So I think instead I'm going to stir it to get it going just a little bit more. There we go. Now it's getting all mixed in. And now I'll put this back on. Ooh, that's bubbling a little too much. I probably stirred it just a little more than I wanted to. That's okay. Okay, now here we go. Might have stirred it just a little too much here and gotten a little impatient. Here we go, maybe. You know what? I'm going to clean this up just a little bit because I think that might be causing me some issues here. gonna try it with a new piece. I got a couple different pieces of pasta ready. There we go. Took a little bit to get going. All right, so you can see it all the way even from over there. Got this reset, and I think I'm gonna do this one more time with some fresh hydrogen peroxide and yeast to get this going. So I can show you one more time now that I brought the camera a little bit closer and get that ready. And I've got about a teaspoon left in here, so I'll just dump that in. We're gonna pour that. And I'm gonna fold it instead of stirring it, just so it lasts a little longer than it did last time. Set that there. So make sure this is dry. Set my pasta right up here. And let's see if I can get another good reaction out of this. There we go. So it's lighting. And I think as this falls, there we go. All right, so now you can see that it's got a sustained flame going. I'm not sure exactly how long that'll last. So you can definitely play around with this to see how much. I'm gonna bring this over so you can see it while it's going. Look at that, we've got a flame going. It's a little hard to see actually at this point because it's gonna be a very hot flame because it's blue. All right, so I'm gonna tell you right now why it's so important that you use a lid that is not attached to the jar. So you don't want the ring around it, you don't want it there. Oh, look at that, now we've got a great rocket engine going. All right, and the reason is because what's happening inside this jar is that the yeast is reacting with the hydrogen peroxide, and it's actually creating water as its byproducts and pure oxygen. And that's creating pressure within this jar. And if we were to have the lid screwed on, it could be dangerous and it could explode. But because this lid isn't actually attached, it can just push the lid right off if the pressure is too much. But since we have the hole in there right now, instead what's happening is it's just pushing small amounts of oxygen through that hole. So our rocket engine is actually considered a hybrid rocket engine. So there's 3 different types of rocket engines. You've got solid fuel. Ooh, look at that. So I think that's just about spent. There's solid fuel, liquid fuel, and then there's hybrid fuel. So this is a hybrid technically because it's got both in it. So we've got the pasta as the solid, and then it's oxidizing. So that means it's reacting with oxygen. I'm going to put this on here and see if we can get it lit one more time. I'm not sure if we'll be able to or not, but we can definitely try. It looks like in the jar the reaction's still going fairly strong. Yeah, there we go. So this pasta is burning, and quite quickly actually, along with the pure oxygen. So if you saw my video about how fire works before, you'll know that for fire to work, it needs a fuel source, which it's burning that pasta, but it also needs oxygen. So if you saw, I'll hold just a regular piece of pasta and I try to get it to burn, it's not really going to light on fire. Now, if I just keep holding it in the fire, it'll eventually burn away, but it's that rapid amount of oxygen that's combining with it that makes it able to do that. This one's just about spent on there too, I think. So this is a hybrid rocket engine. So we have actually built right here a simple version of a rocket engine. Ooh, that's burning very hot. So you can see the embers still burning right in there. It's probably going to char the whole thing in there. So remember, be very safe with this one. This is one that you probably want to be doing with adult supervision. and you'll want to do it in a decently well ventilated area. I am in the library here. All right. Oh, that's interesting. It's burned away quite a bit of the pasta now. So now it's working very well. So this is the basics of how rockets work, whether you're going to the moon or just making a little model like this. They are going to be providing thrust, so that means pushing. So this would actually be pushing this jar down onto this table a little bit. All right. So I think this one is just about burned down. So I think that's a good stopping point. So we have right now made a rocket engine. So this is Science Explosion. My name is Zach, and thank you very much for joining me at Hudson Public Library online. So remember, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I know you can't comment on the YouTube videos themselves, but you can always feel free to send us any emails with questions. If you have any videos you'd like to see me do, also let me know that too. I'm always looking out for topics to do. So thank you everyone very much for joining me, and bye.